Have you ever wondered how a theoretical physicist, once obsessed with uncovering the secrets of the universe, ended up shaping the world of Wall Street? How someone who spent years chasing scientific truth decided to walk away from it all and step into the chaotic, unpredictable world of finance? This isn't a Hollywood movie. It's the real-life journey of Emanuel Derman, told in his powerful memoir, My Life as a Quant. In today's video, we'll dive into this remarkable story where science meets money, where elegant equations collide with human emotion, and where models try to make sense of an uncertain world. Ready to explore the edge between logic and risk? Let's get into it. Hi, welcome back to LeanReads, a channel for sharing knowledge and developing yourself comprehensively through good books. While listening, if you like it and want to learn more, we have attached a link to buy the book in the description. My Life as a Quant tells the remarkable story of Emanuel Derman. His journey from a theoretical physicist working with particle accelerators to a leading quantitative finance expert on Wall Street. The book is both a deeply personal memoir and a thoughtful exploration of the fascinating intersection between science, mathematics, and finance. Derman takes readers through the twists and turns of his career, from probing the secrets of the universe to navigating the chaos and uncertainty of the financial markets, where even the most sophisticated mathematical models meet their limits in the face of human psychology. Emanuel Derman is a physicist turned financial expert, best known for his pioneering contributions to mathematical modeling at Goldman Sachs. He co-developed the Black Derman toy model, one of the first and most influential interest rate pricing tools used in financial markets. Currently, he is a professor at Columbia University, where he teaches and researches the deep connections between science, finance, and philosophy. His other notable works include Models, Behaving Badly, and The Volatility Smile. To most people, the world of particle physics and the bustling floors of Wall Street seem to have nothing in common. One is a quiet realm of abstract equations, where scientists pursue the deep laws of the universe. The other is a battlefield of capital, where every second counts and greed wrestles with fear. Yet between these two seemingly unrelated worlds lies a hidden thread. People. Curious minds once devoted to science have taken a different path, bringing their quantitative thinking into the whirlwind of modern finance. For years, Wall Street giants like Goldman Sachs have quietly recruited brilliant physicists and mathematicians not to study the cosmos, but to decode the markets. In a space where a 1% error can spell success or disaster, firms rely on precise calculations and sharp algorithms. The people behind these tools are known as quants, quantitative analysts, who serve as the bridge between abstract scientific theory and the real-world mechanics of stocks, bonds, and complex financial products. For Emanuel Derman, the author of My Life as a Quant, the story I isn't just about switching careers from physics to finance. What makes his memoir truly distinctive is how he reflects on science, on finance, and on human nature itself. Amid all the formulas and data, Derman keeps asking the deeper questions. Do we really understand the world, or are we simply using limited tools to describe a reality that is far beyond our grasp? The book begins in academic hallways, winds through the intricate mathematical models of finance, and ends in deeply human reflections. It's a journey not just from physics to Wall Street, but into the inner life of a man who never stopped trying to make sense of the world. In 1966, Emanuel Derman arrived in New York filled with hope and excitement. In his imagination, it was a city full of brilliance, and life just like the scenes from the movies he had watched in his youth. But the reality was starkly different. Cold, unfamiliar, and chaotic. After a long flight from Cape Town, South Africa, he was dropped off at Columbia University's International House in Erie, silent dormitory that felt more like abandonment than welcome. The dust, the foreign air, and the exhaustion from jet lag made him feel like a lost soul in a strange land. Yet beneath the fatigue and disorientation lay a quiet determination. Derman knew he wasn't there to daydream. He was there to begin the long journey of becoming a physicist. At that time, particle physics stood at the pinnacle of scientific pursuit, a frontier where the world's brightest minds were racing to uncover the final secrets of the universe. He dreamed of reaching that edge just like Einstein once did. Science wasn't just a passion. It was a path to greatness, one that could transcend the limits of ordinary life. But that path quickly revealed its harshness. Columbia's physics department was home to some of the most brilliant minds in the world. Studying among them was an immense opportunity, but also a mirror that exposed his every shortcoming. His advisor wasted no time in pointing out the gaps in his knowledge. The presence of legendary figures like Nobel laureate Tsung-Dao Lee only made him feel smaller. In quiet moments of reflection, Derman began to question, did he really belong here? Gradually, the ideals that once lit his way began to waver. The belief that the universe could be explained by a few elegant, foundational principles, the heart of reductionism that he so deeply believed in, started to lose its appeal. The messy, contradictory realities of everyday life, the emotions, the people, the chaos seemed untouched by abstract theories. He found himself drawn to that very complexity, that unquantifiable side of life. By the time he held his PhD in 1973, the dream he had arrived with was no longer intact. The romantic image of the scientist basking in intellectual glory had faded, replaced by a more sobering truth. 7 years of fatigue, endless equations, and countless sleepless nights. He began to ask himself, what was it all for? And he realized creating knowledge takes more than intellect. It takes patience, timing, and even luck. Yet amid the doubts and drifting, something else quietly bloomed. During those years, he met Eva, fellow student at Columbia. Their love grew slowly and steadily, becoming a refuge in the midst of his uncertainty. After graduation, they got married. In the dry, cerebral world of academia, his relationship with Eva was one of the few things that felt warm and real. Even though he would later leave the research track, the bond grounded, him pulling him back toward a life that felt more human, more connected. In the fall of 1973, Emanuel Derman left New York to begin his first postdoctoral research position at the University of Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, his wife Eva had to stay behind to complete her own PhD program. The separation and new work environment exposed him to a deep sense of loneliness he had entitled. He had once imagined postdoctoral research as a quiet and intellectually invigorating journey, but the reality proved to be far more unforgiving. Job prospects for physicists were shrinking fast, and the pressure to publish constantly weighed heavily on him. A sense of disorientation began to creep in. The intellectual life he had once dreamed of now felt like an endless grind of equations, where scientific success was measured by citations and peer recognition. In the midst of this uncertain period, an unexpected opportunity emerged from his research on dimuons, anomalous results from particle accelerator experiments. The work led to several published papers that gained attention within the academic community. As a result, he received an offer from the University of Oxford, one of the most prestigious destinations for any scientist. In 1975, he crossed the Atlantic, carrying with him hope for a renewed intellectual life. At Oxford, Derman found academic fulfillment, but the sense of isolation persisted. Eva wouldn't be able to join him in England for another 7 months. During that time, he lived in a closed academic community where, despite being an official member, he often felt culturally and socially disconnected. The peculiar structure and traditions of Oxford's college system made him feel like an outsider, someone observing life from the margins rather than participating in it. Though his skepticism toward reductionism continued to grow, Derman stayed committed to his research. He focused intently on charm quarks, fundamental particles that help explain the composition of matter and dimuon data. Particle pairs created during high-energy collisions, which could indirectly signal the presence of rare particles like charm quarks. He spent many late nights programming, analyzing, and writing. His time at Penn had taught him a hard lesson. If you can turn your research into a published paper, you must at least find a way not to let your efforts go to waste. This more pragmatic mindset helped him regain faith in his work. At times, he even felt the thrill of true intellectual transcendence. When Eva finally arrived, their personal life began to stabilize. They shared a flat with a quirky colleague, but eventually settled into a rhythm that suited them. Though Oxford winters were harsh and life remained challenging, they had found a kind of pace calm, even if not entirely familiar. But beneath it all, subtler tensions stirred. Britain at the time had a quiet but real strain of xenophobia. And Derman, a South African Jew, often felt keenly aware of his position at society's edge. His time at Oxford wasn't just about being part of a world-class academic institution. It was also a continuous process of navigating the distance between language, culture, and unspoken social codes. During those introspective months, Derman happened upon the writings of Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian philosopher and founder of anthroposophy, a spiritual scientific worldview that seeks to bridge modern science with human inner life. At first, Steiner's ideas blending mysticism and logic seemed strange, but they resonated in an unexpected way. They awakened in Derman an emotional and philosophical depth, untouched by equations, machines, or raw data. This meeting point between belief and reason sparked a deeper contemplation on the limits of knowledge and the human need to make meaning of the world. As his time at Oxford came to an end, Derman realized he was no longer simply a physicist. His worldview had evolved toward that of a philosopher, someone questioning the boundaries of understanding and the frameworks through which people assign significance to reality. With this new perspective, he accepted another postdoctoral position, this time at Rockefeller University in New York. When he left Oxford, the rare, sweltering days of a British summer were also coming to a close. With a child on the way, he boarded the plane back to the United States, carrying not only new ambitions, but also a more thoughtful and expansive worldview, ready for the next chapter of his life. Emanuel Derman's postdoctoral years at Rockefeller University were a rare period of peace in his life, a time when he could enjoy both academic freedom and the quiet joy of being a young father. Without teaching obligations and working in a cozy, wood-paneled office, he had the space and time to focus on theoretical physics, while also spending relaxed mornings strolling the campus with his young son, Joshua. These simple moments weren't just joyful. They were almost like a spiritual ritual that gave him a sense of wholeness. But this tranquility soon began to show cracks. His relationship with his supervisor, Abraham Pays, started to fray not through any dramatic conflict, but through subtle and unmistakable signals. More than once, Derman found job postings left in his mailboxes, if to gently remind him not to expect a long-term future at Rockefeller. That was when he realized his time there was drawing to a close. He then moved to Boulder, Colorado, for another postdoctoral position. The majestic Rocky Mountains were breathtaking, but they couldn't ease the deepening loneliness he felt. His wife Eva and their son Josh had stayed behind in New York, and he was also grieving the recent loss of his mother. While the job in Boulder offered him academic freedom and professional recognition, an emptiness began to take hold. Long hours of research no longer brought the excitement they once had. Deep down, he knew that it wasn't just physics that no longer fit, it was the entire academic environment. The endless cycle of research, publication, and grant applications had begun to feel aimless. Wrestling with this growing sense of disillusionment, he made a pivotal decision: to return to New York and accept a job at Bell Labs, a renowned hub for science and technology. At first, this sounded like a promising new chapter, but reality quickly set in. Corporate life felt like a hamster wheel clocking in with time cards, navigating layers of management, working under pale fluorescent lights. His daily commute to New Jersey was long, and although the job seemed stable, he felt increasingly confined and disconnected from the curiosity that once defined him. Surprisingly, amid this seemingly uninspiring backdrop, he discovered a new passion: computer programming. Derman began writing code, building computational tools, eventually developed HEQS's software system that was not only highly practical, but also intellectually elegant. Programming gave him the satisfaction of creating something useful and tangible, in stark contrast to the abstraction and ambiguity of theoretical research. Still, a lingering sense of stagnation haunted him during his 5 years at Bell Labs. Every evening, after a long day, he would come home and voice the same complaints, almost like a ritual. Then, one night, he stumbled upon my dinner with a 1981 American philosophical film by Louis Mao, centered on a deep, wandering conversation about life. Watching it stirred something inside him. The film's reflections on friendship, purpose, and philosophical living awakened a long-dormant sense of longing for a life of meaning, for the ideals he had once dreamed of, but forgotten. Just as his soul was still trembling from that revelation, the phone began to ring. Headhunters representing top Wall Street firms were calling, and among them was an offer that stood out from Goldman Sachs, which was building a new quantitative trading team. Derman felt a spark, a gut feeling that this was worth exploring. In November 1985, he officially left the world of theoretical physics, closing a long and formative chapter of his life, and stepped into a bold new journey on Wall Street. It wasn't just another job, it was a reinvention, a chance to reshape himself and write the next part of his story in a completely different form. When Emanuel Derman joined Goldman Sachs in the mid-1980s, the atmosphere at the firm was still intimate and collegial. With just around 5,000 employees, Goldman was a place brimming with ambition and energy. Derman began his new chapter under the guidance of Ravi Dattatreya, who quickly assigned him a specific, but highly challenging task to improve the firm's existing bond option pricing models, which had several known flaws. At the time, the bond options market was rapidly growing. Derman created a new tool called Bosco, a remarkably user-friendly interface built upon an enhanced and more sophisticated version of the well-known Black-Scholes-Merton model. Bosco proved to be highly effective and was quickly embraced by traders, thanks to its simplicity, intuitiveness, and practicality. What made it even more significant was the recognition it received from Fisher Black, one of the co-creators of the original Black-Scholes-Merton model. Earning Black's praise gave Derman a major confidence boost and marked an important milestone in his financial career. His relationship with Fisher Black didn't stop at admiration. After their initial encounter, the two discovered a shared mindset, meticulous, detail-oriented, and driven by clarity. Along with another colleague, Bill Toy, they began collaborating on a new project. Their goal was to develop a model that was both simple and effective for pricing bond options. They aimed to create a tool that realistically reflected how the markets actually behaved, especially when it came to interest rates, which directly influence bond prices. They drew inspiration from lattice models, a simplification method physicists often use to analyze complex systems. In their version, short-term interest rates would move up or down in defined steps over time, creating a lattice structure that mimicked market dynamics. From this, they could infer the value of long-term bonds based on those rate movements. The result was the Black-Derman model, which allowed users to derive the market's expectations of future interest rates using current data such as bond prices and the yield curve. It was a unified framework for modeling a variety of market scenarios with logic and real-world applicability. At first, Derman hoped the model might become a unified theory for how interest rates functioned. But he quickly realized that it was only a good tool for specific situations, not a universal solution. Fisher Black, ever pragmatic, described it as a fictional model, one that worked as if the market cared only about short-term interest rates, while ignoring other factors. Even so, the model was good enough to approximate most real-world behaviors and became widely accepted among traders as a practical and accurate everyday tool. The BDT model gradually became a cornerstone for modeling fixed-income instruments on Wall Street. For Derman, writing the academic paper that described it was not just a professional step forward, it also taught him how to clearly and precisely communicate ideas, a skill that would stay with him for the rest of his career. By 1988, both Derman and Bill Toy were feeling worn out. In just 2 years, Derman had reported to 4 different managers. The constant turnover created a sense of instability and took a toll on morale. Quietly, he began interviewing for other positions, hoping to find a better environment. Eventually, he received an offer from Salomon Brothers, a powerhouse in the fixed-income world. The salary they proposed was double what he was making at Goldman, but the workplace was notoriously high pressure. Salomon had a reputation as a brutal meritocracy, where only relentless effort could keep you in the game. Despite knowing the risks, Derman decided to embrace the challenge. That fall, he left Goldman Sachs behind, walking away from everything he had built there, and stepped into an entirely new journey. Emanuel Derman's time at Salomon Brothers was indeed so much a career advancement as it was a survival test. He entered the firm full of expectations only to leave a year later, exhausted and disillusioned. From the start, he was thrown into the deep end of the floating rate mortgage business at Field, so complex and unpredictable that, in comparison, physics seemed clean and orderly. He found himself leading a team where everyone understood the issues better than he did, and each day felt like an exam for which he had never studied. The more he learned, the more endless the complexity seemed. Building mortgage models wasn't about finding precise solutions. It was about navigating a storm of market behavior, human psychology, and reasoned guesswork. Even worse than the technical challenges was the workplace culture. Salomon felt like a battlefield. Programmers hoarded their code, collaboration was practically non-existent, and meetings often resembled turf wars more than team discussions. Compared to the cooperative, intellectually driven atmosphere at Goldman Sachs, Salomon was like a financial version of Lord of the Flies, a chaotic survival love-to-fittest environment where power and ego reigned. Making matters worse, Derman's manager, Mike, was authoritarian and rigid, fostering a toxic space in which creativity could barely survive. Yet amid the chaos, Derman still managed to learn something valuable. He began to see financial models not just as analytical tools, but as narratives, convincing stories that could shape decision-making. However, after a sharp market downturn and a brutal round of layoffs, the message became clear. His time at Salomon was over. Strangely enough, the turbulence had prepared him better for what came next. Derman returned to Goldman Sachs, and due to the sudden departure of Fisher Black, he was quickly promoted to co-head of the quantitative strategies group. It was a surprising ascent, but one that felt incredibly smooth. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing the work he was meant to do. His background in physics gave him a unique edge as he tackled one of the most complex problems of the time: pricing exotic Japanese options linked to the Nikkei index and currency fluctuations. So how did he solve it? Imagine the pricing model as a fruit salad. Break it into parts, weigh each ingredient carefully, and choose the right frame of reference. When done correctly, the math begins to align, and suddenly, the complexity starts to make sense. This model eventually evolved into a risk management system called Samurai, and Derman's unique approach, transforming complexity into clarity and usability, became a defining hallmark of his career. For the first time in a long while, he genuinely felt he was on the right path. After the introduction of the risk system known as Samurai, everything seemed to change. It wasn't flashy or widely publicized, but it was genuinely revolutionary. In Goldman Sachs' quantitative team, no one had seen anything quite like it. Samurai offered traders a new framework for understanding and managing risk across complex derivatives portfolios, and they fully embraced it. In the early 1990s, a new craze swept through the financial markets. Exotic options were gaining popularity and traction. Goldman Sachs wanted to be at the forefront of this movement. The success of Samurai had propelled Emanuel Derman's group, then called Quantitative Strategies, into the center of the firm's most critical financial activities. Their role became increasingly vital. But a new market phenomenon soon emerged that challenged the status quo. The volatility smiler, strange downward-sloping curve, showing how implied volatility varied across different strike prices. Derman first noticed it during a quiet moment in Tokyo in 1990. Strangely enough, the canonical Black-Scholes model, the widely used framework for pricing options, couldn't explain this smile. It was as if there was something fundamentally misunderstood in how financial models predicted market behavior. The smile became an obsession for Derman. To him, it revealed deep flaws in the very models considered foundational. If traders relied on formulas that didn't reflect reality to hedge risk, perhaps their entire strategy was flawed from the start. Together with his colleague Iraj Khani, Derman set out to find a solution. They stopped trying to force reality into traditional models. Instead, they accepted that markets were messy, volatile, erratic, and ever-changing. Their research produced a new model, the implied tree. This structure was flexible and could bend with real data like rubber. Its most creative mechanism involved using three options at different strike prices to extract local volatilities, effectively recreating the smile observed in the market. It was a breakthrough. The model was comprehensive, mathematically elegant, and closely aligned with reality. Yet, to their surprise, it wasn't widely adopted. Most traders found it too complex for daily use. They were still more comfortable with the simplicity of Black-Scholes if it no longer kept pace with evolving markets. Around this time, Goldman Sachs itself was undergoing a major transformation. In 1999, the firm went public for the first time. What had once been a tightly knit collegial organization began to shift. Internal bonds weakened. Though Derman continued his work developing and evaluating financial risk, the old sense of excitement began to fade. He grew increasingly aware that no matter how sophisticated a model might be, it could never fully capture the chaotic and probabilistic nature of financial markets. To Derman, models weren't about finding a single right answer. They were tools for imagining multiple possible futures. In this volatile world, risk wasn't just a number, it was a set of possibilities. And then, on a September morning in 2001, everything changed: the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Like many others, Derman began to reflect not just on his job, but on the meaning of his work. Not long after he left Goldman Sachs, ending a 17-year journey, he returned to where it all began. In 2003, he rejoined Columbia University, this time not as a student, but as a professor. After his long journey from physics to finance and back to academia, Derman had come to a more mature understanding. Financial models are not physical laws. They do not uncover universal truths. They're more like intellectual exercises, tools that help us explore, approximate, and partially understand an unpredictable reality. To Derman, quantitative finance was a blend of mathematics and intuition. It required reason, but also feeling and dialogue. The role of a quant wasn't to eliminate uncertainty, but to learn how to think and act wisely within it. Emanuel Derman began his journey with a deep passion for physics, pursuing an academic path in hopes of discovering fundamental truths through science. But after years of research and the pressures of postdoctoral life, he gradually realized that academia wasn't the right path for him. Leaving the laboratory behind, he entered Wall Street, a radically different world, where intelligence and mathematics were used to interpret markets and generate profits. Joining Goldman Sachs during the early days of quantitative finance, Derman and his colleagues developed the Black-Derman toy model, a major breakthrough that marked a new era in financial modeling. With the analytical mindset of a scientist, he continued to create models aimed at explaining and predicting the complex dynamics of the market. But the deeper he went, the more he came to understand that finance is not like physics as a world that doesn't follow fixed laws, where human behavior plays a role that cannot be fully captured or predicted. What troubled Derman most was the limits of models. No matter how sophisticated, they could never fully decode the uncertainty at the heart of financial markets. In the end, he saw that models are not crystal balls, they are tools for thinking. Frameworks for imagining possibilities, not instruments for certainty. Reading my life as a quant felt like taking a profound intellectual journey, not only through the worlds of physics and finance, but into the mind of someone relentlessly curious about how the universe and human systems truly work. Derman's memoir doesn't just recount a career shift from theoretical physics to quantitative finance. It captures a personal transformation shaped by both ambition and disillusionment. His writing is thoughtful, introspective, and layered with a kind of philosophical maturity that only comes from someone who's questioned everything, including the very meaning of models and theories themselves. As someone interested in both science and economics, I found Derman's story deeply relatable. His early pursuit of particle physics at Columbia, driven by the belief that the universe could be reduced to a few elegant laws, mirrors the idealism many of us carry when entering academia. But what struck me most was his honest confrontation with disappointment. The loneliness of postdoctoral life, the professional uncertainty, and the existential doubt that crept in when the clarity of science didn't seem to reflect the complexity of life. His shift to Wall Street was not a triumphant pivot, but a practical and personal decision, a move to regain agency in a world that had grown increasingly abstract. And yet, even in finance, Derman sought meaning. He brought with him not only mathematical precision, but also a desire to find order in chaos. His work on models like Black-Derman toy or the implied tree approach to volatility was not just technical innovation. It was a search for deeper understanding in markets ruled by fear, greed, and unpredictability. What I appreciated most is Derman's humility. He doesn't overstate the power of quantitative finance, and the contrary. He warns against the illusion of certainty that models can give. To him, models are metaphors, not truths. They are limited lenses through which we try to glimpse a shifting, often irrational world. That insight is as valuable in finance as it is in life. By the end of the book, I wasn't just impressed by Derman's career path, I was moved by his intellectual honesty. My life as a quant isn't only for quants or physicists. It's for anyone grappling with the boundaries between logic and intuition, order and uncertainty, ambition and meaning. In short, this is a must-read for those curious about the intersection of science and finance, but also for those asking deeper questions about what we choose to dedicate our minds and lives to. And that brings us to the end of this book summary. I hope you found it helpful. If you're interested in more books on similar topics, feel free to leave a comment, write a review, or share your recommendations with us. You can also consider buying the book to dive deeper into the full experience and support the author. Include the link in the video description below to make it easier to find. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, share, and turn on the notification bell to get updates on future videos. I'll see you in the next one.